A lot of photographers think the only way forward is to start over completely. New gear, new system, new goals, new identity. But most of the time, that urge isn't about growth. It's about relief. And if you reset the wrong way, you don't actually fix the problem. You just recreate it in a different form. This is about how to reset your photography without burning everything down, and why smaller, calmer resets work better than dramatic ones. When photography starts to feel heavy, most people assume they need a big change. They look at what they're doing and think, this isn't working. I need a fresh start. I need to do this differently. That instinct makes sense. But it's important to understand where it comes from, because the urge to start over is rarely about photography itself. It's about overload. Overload can come from a lot of places. Too much information, too many opinions, too many half-finished ideas, too many expectations layered on top of each other. At a certain point, your brain stops seeing photography as something creative and starts seeing it as a problem that needs fixing. That's usually when people reach for drastic resets. They delete everything. They buy new gear, they abandon what they were learning, they decide they need a whole new approach. Sometimes they even decide they need to become a different kind of photographer entirely. What's actually happening in that moment is not clarity. It's fatigue. And fatigue makes extreme solutions feel appealing. There's a sense of relief in thinking, if I just wipe the slate clean, everything will feel easier. But here's the quiet truth most people don't hear. Burning everything down doesn't remove confusion. It just removes context. And context is what learning actually needs. Most photographers who feel stuck are not doing too little. They're doing too much, in the wrong order, without enough support. When you reset aggressively, you often lose the few stable pieces you did have. You lose familiarity, you lose partial understanding, you lose the sense of continuity that helps learning stick. That's why so many people restart photography over and over, but never feel settled. They're not resetting the problem, they're resetting themselves. Another reason the urge to start over feels so strong is because photography doesn't show progress in a straight line. You can work hard and still feel unsure. You can practice and still feel inconsistent. You can learn something intellectually without being able to apply it yet. That gap between effort and visible results is uncomfortable. Starting over feels like a way to escape that discomfort. It creates the illusion of momentum. But momentum without direction just creates more exhaustion. There's also a lot of cultural pressure baked into photography that makes people feel like resets have to be dramatic. We see stories about photographers who found their style overnight or finally figured it out after a big change. What we don't see are the quieter resets, the ones where someone didn't quit, didn't reinvent everything, didn't blow up their system. They just simplified. They chose fewer things to focus on. They stopped trying to solve everything at once. They allowed some questions to stay unanswered for a while. Those resets don't make good highlight reels, but they're the ones that actually last. Another thing worth naming here is that many photographers confuse boredom, frustration, and burnout. They feel stuck and assume it means they're no longer passionate, but very often the issue isn't lack of interest. It's lack of clarity. When you don't know what to work on next, everything feels heavier than it should. Your brain has to make too many decisions just to get started. That's not a motivation problem. That's a structure problem. This is especially true for people who care deeply about photography. If you didn't care, you wouldn't be stressed. You wouldn't be thinking about resetting at all. The desire to start over is often a sign that you want photography to feel better, not that you want to walk away from it. So the real question isn't, do I need to start over? The real question is, what is actually causing the pressure? Most of the time, the answer is not that you chose the wrong camera or the wrong genre or the wrong goal. It's that too many things are competing for your attention at once. Light, composition, Settings, editing, style, consistency, practice, confidence. When everything feels important, nothing feels manageable. That's when people reach for big resets. But big resets often create new problems. They introduce new variables, new decisions, new uncertainty. Instead of feeling lighter, photography starts to feel fragile, like one wrong move will break it again. A calmer reset works differently. A calmer reset doesn't ask you to abandon what you've already learned. It asks you to stabilize it. It asks you to slow down long enough to see what's actually causing friction. It asks you to remove pressure before you add anything new. And most importantly, it asks you to stop treating photography like something that needs to be fixed all at once. Because sustainable progress doesn't come from dramatic restarts. It comes from knowing what deserves your energy right now and what can wait. That's where real relief begins. Before we talk about how to reset photography safely, we need to pause for a moment. Because most people approach resets with the wrong question. They ask, what should I change? But that question already assumes that change is the answer. Often, it's not. So here's the pause. Take a breath. If photography feels heavy right now, that doesn't mean it's broken. It means something is asking too much of you. That's an important distinction, because when something is broken, you replace it. When something is overloaded, you lighten it. Most photography resets should be about lightening, not replacing. This is where a lot of people go wrong. They assume relief will come from something new. A new camera, a new course, a new niche, a new workflow, a new commitment to take it seriously this time. But pressure doesn't disappear just because the packaging changes. If the underlying load stays the same, it will resurface. So a calmer reset starts with subtraction, not addition. The first step is identifying what is currently creating the most pressure. And I don't mean everything, I mean the specific pressure points. For some people, it's decision pressure. Every time they pick up the camera, they're deciding settings, lenses, styles, and approaches all at once. For others, it's expectation pressure. They feel like every photo should look portfolio ready, every practice session should show improvement, every outing should count. For others, it's comparison pressure. They're constantly measuring their work against tutorials, Instagram, or other photographers who seem further along. And for many people, it's time pressure. They feel like they're always behind where they thought they'd be, behind other people, behind their own goals. You can't reset effectively if you don't know which pressure is the loudest, because each type of pressure needs a different response. Trying to fix everything at once is what creates burnout in the first place. So the goal here is not to redesign your entire photography life. The goal is to stabilize the system you're already in. That starts by narrowing focus. A sustainable reset almost always involves choosing fewer things to care about for now. That phrase matters. For now. This is not about giving up long-term goals. It's about sequencing. Most people overload themselves by trying to grow in every direction at once. Better photos, better editing, better consistency, better style, better confidence. Those things don't all develop simultaneously. They develop in layers. And when layers are stacked incorrectly, the whole structure feels unstable. So one of the most effective reset moves is choosing one primary focus. Not 3, not 5. 1, that focus might be light, or composition, or practice consistency, or comfort with your camera. Whatever it is, everything else becomes secondary for a while. That's not regression, that's scaffolding. Scaffolding exists to support growth, not limit it. Another important reset step is setting gentler boundaries around practice. Many photographers practice in ways that actually increase pressure. They wait until they have time for a real session. They expect long stretches of focus. They tie practice to productivity. That creates avoidance, because if practice requires too much energy, it becomes something you postpone. A calmer reset changes how practice is defined. Practice becomes shorter, more contained, more forgiving. 10 minutes counts. One intentional choice counts. Stopping before you're exhausted counts. This is one of the hardest mindset shifts for people who care deeply because it can feel like you're not doing enough. But consistency is not built by intensity. It's built by repeatability. If you can repeat something without dread, it will carry you further than occasional bursts of effort. Another powerful reset move is separating learning from performance. A lot of pressure comes from trying to learn and perform at the same time. You're practicing, but also judging. You're experimenting, but also evaluating. You're learning, but also comparing. That's exhausting. A sustainable reset creates protected learning space. That might mean shooting without sharing, practicing without editing, exploring without saving images. It means allowing yourself to learn privately. Learning does not require witnesses. In fact, it often works better without them. Another thing that reduces pressure dramatically is simplifying your inputs. Too many voices create confusion. Too many tutorials create conflict. Too many opinions make it hard to trust your own judgment. A calmer reset involves choosing fewer sources. One teacher, one framework, one learning path. That doesn't mean those sources are perfect. It means they're consistent. Consistency builds confidence. Another reset principle that matters is letting go of the idea that everything needs to improve right now. This is where the reframe happens. Here's the reframe. Progress does not require simultaneous improvement. It requires enough improvement in the right place. If one part of photography becomes more stable, the rest often follows. When light feels less confusing, composition becomes easier. When camera handling feels familiar, confidence improves. When decision fatigue drops, creativity has room to show up. You don't need to fix everything. You need to fix the bottleneck, the thing that's slowing everything else down. That's usually not obvious until you slow down. Another important reset strategy is creating defaults. Defaults are decisions you don't have to remake every time. A default lens, a default shooting mode, a default practice structure. Defaults reduce cognitive load. They free mental space. That mental space is what learning needs. Defaults don't lock you in. They give you a starting point. Another place pressure hides is in how people define success. If success only looks like visible improvement, you'll miss quieter progress. Feeling calmer matters. Feeling less avoidant matters. Feeling more curious matters. Those shifts indicate that the reset is working. Another thing worth naming is that sustainable resets require patience with uneven progress. Some skills return quickly, others lag behind. That's normal. Burnout and overload don't erase knowledge evenly. They disrupt access. As pressure drops, access returns, but not all at once. Trusting that process matters. Another reset step that's often overlooked is adjusting expectations around time. Your life is different now. Your energy is different. Your responsibilities are different. Resetting photography means designing it to fit your current reality, not the version of yourself you used to be. That's not settling, that's adapting. And adaptation is what allows things to last. Another powerful way to reduce pressure is learning to stop earlier. Most people stop practice when they're depleted. That teaches your brain that photography costs too much. Stopping while you still feel okay builds trust. It shows your nervous system that photography is safe again. That matters more than people realize. Another reset principle is accepting that clarity comes after simplification. People wait to feel clear before simplifying. But clarity is often the result of fewer choices, not the cause. Simplify first, let clarity follow. Another thing that helps resets stick is allowing yourself to keep unfinished things unfinished. Not everything needs closure immediately. Some questions can stay open, some skills can develop slowly, some uncertainty is part of learning. Urgency makes uncertainty intolerable. Calm makes it manageable. Another important part of a sustainable reset is redefining what it means to move forward. Moving forward doesn't always look like visible progress. Sometimes it looks like reduced resistance, or increased curiosity, or simply picking up the camera without dread. Those are real milestones. They indicate that pressure is lifting, and pressure lifting is what allows growth to resume. Another thing worth acknowledging is that many people fear that if they slow down, they'll lose momentum. In reality, slowing down is often what creates momentum, because momentum requires traction. Traction comes from stability, and stability comes from systems that don't demand constant effort. That's why calmer resets work. They don't rely on willpower, they rely on design, they remove unnecessary friction, they lower the cost of showing up. They make photography something you can return to, even on hard days. That's the goal. Not perfection, not mastery. Returnability. A sustainable reset doesn't make photography exciting overnight. It makes it neutral first, and neutrality is powerful. Because neutral doesn't drain you, neutral gives you room to breathe. And once there's room to breathe, creativity has space to come back. That's how you reset without burning everything down. By changing how much photography asks of you, not by changing who you are as a photographer. There's a moment in a healthy reset that doesn't get talked about very much. It's not exciting. It doesn't feel like a breakthrough. It feels quieter. Photography stops feeling urgent. You're no longer trying to fix it. You're no longer scanning for what's wrong. You're just doing it again. That's usually the first sign that a reset is working. Not excitement, not motivation, neutrality. Neutrality means your nervous system isn't bracing anymore. It means photography has stopped registering as a threat. That matters more than people realize, because creativity doesn't come back through force. It comes back when it feels safe to return. Another sign a reset is working is that your inner dialogue changes. You stop saying things like, "I should be better by now," or "I've wasted so much time." Instead, you start noticing smaller things, like behaving in a way you didn't expect. A composition choice that feels intentional. A moment where you trust yourself without checking a tutorial. Those moments don't feel dramatic, but they're foundational. They're evidence that pressure has lifted enough for learning to re-enter the picture. Another sign of a healthy reset is that gaps don't scare you as much. You might miss a week or two, and instead of spiraling, you return. That ability to return matters more than consistency ever will. Consistency built on pressure collapses. Consistency built on trust lasts. Another subtle marker of a sustainable reset is that you stop overcorrecting. You're not constantly adjusting your goals, or your tools, or your identity as a photographer. You're not reinventing yourself every few months. You're allowing things to unfold at a human pace. That pace is slower than most online narratives suggest. And that's okay. Another thing that changes during a healthy reset is how you relate to unfinished work. You don't feel the same urgency to complete everything. You let projects breathe. You allow learning to be partial. You accept that some skills will develop before others. That acceptance is not complacency. It's maturity. Another sign a reset is sticking is that photography stops competing with the rest of your life. It fits. It doesn't require negotiation or justification. You're not trying to earn your place as a photographer through constant output. You're simply practicing. That's a big shift, because a lot of burnout comes from turning photography into a referendum on your worth or discipline. A sustainable reset removes that burden. Photography becomes something you do, not something you prove. Another important part of letting a reset last is resisting the urge to optimize too soon. This is tricky, because once things feel calmer, people want to build on that calm immediately. They want to add goals, add structure, add expectations. But sustainability isn't built by stacking demands quickly. It's built by letting stability settle. Think of it like letting a shaken jar sit on the counter. You don't stir it to see if it's ready, you let it settle. Another way to support a long-term reset is to notice what costs you energy versus what gives it back. Not everything that drains you is bad, but when too many draining things stack together, burnout returns. A sustainable practice has balance. Some effort, some ease, some challenge, some familiarity. Paying attention to that balance matters. Another key piece of letting a reset last is being honest about your capacity. Capacity changes, season to season, year to year. What you could sustain before might not be sustainable now. That's not failure. That's information. Designing photography around your current capacity is how you avoid burning everything down again. Another thing that helps reset stick is allowing your relationship with photography to evolve. You might want different things now. Different outcomes, different rhythms, different measures of success. That evolution doesn't erase your past work, it builds on it. Another thing that's important to name is that sustainable resets don't eliminate frustration entirely. There will still be days where photography feels awkward, or flat, or unproductive. That doesn't mean the reset failed, it means learning is still happening. The difference is how you respond. You don't panic. You don't start over. You don't assume something is wrong. You adjust. And adjustment is a skill. Another thing that supports longevity is having a clear place to return when things start to feel noisy again. A reference point. A reminder of what matters first. Not a rule book. Not a checklist. Just something that takes decisions off your plate when your brain is tired. That kind of clarity is what keeps resets from turning into cycles. Now, this is the reflective moment. Pause here. If photography has felt heavy, confusing, or fragile lately, notice what this conversation has not asked you to do. It hasn't asked you to hustle. It hasn't asked you to prove anything. It hasn't asked you to reinvent yourself. It's asked you to listen, to simplify, to respect your limits. That's not a lesser approach. It's a wiser one. Most photographers who last didn't push harder. They learned when to stop pushing. They learned how to make photography lighter. They learned how to return without punishment. And that's what makes the difference. A sustainable reset doesn't make photography spectacular overnight. It makes it possible again, and possibility is where growth actually begins. If you're looking for a calmer way to reset, clarity matters more than motivation. Knowing what deserves your energy first and what can wait removes a lot of unnecessary pressure. On my website, there's a simple learning order that's designed to reduce overwhelm and decision fatigue. It's there as a reference whenever things start to feel heavy again. You don't need to burn everything down to move forward. Sometimes the most sustainable reset is just choosing a steadier way back in.